Good evening, lads and ladies. Welcome to the inaugural edition of Reactionary Grounds. This is Philippe Vichy straight from France. Now let's go through the roll call of the other based lads we got on the show.
This is Meat Cutter from an undisclosed location in the Midwest.
Right, and this is Larry Tyndall from Montana.
This here's Big Mac McFaddy, also from an undisclosed location in America. Welcome to Reactionary Grounds channel. Pretty excited about this channel. We've been preparing for it for a while. We apologize in advance for our kind of weak audio game and so forth. We're new to this. It'll get better as we go on. But we thought that this channel was important to make, and we think that there's a good niche for it within the dissident right, dissident media, dissident commentary realm of audience and commentary. This channel hopes primarily to be a nexus or a hub for the different content creators who have their own respective followings, who are in the broader alt media dissident right realm of things. Whether that's Twitter handles that have a good following, small to medium-sized Twitter handles, small to medium-sized Facebook pages, and small to medium-sized YouTube channels. We're not looking to get into anybody huge like Stefan Molyneux to have him on here. We don't want to get that large scale. We want to bring together smaller and medium-sized pages and groups of people, their audiences, respective audiences, to see what we can maybe coordinate or work together on to accomplish, whether that be collectively pushing for this or that legislation, collectively campaigning online for a different candidate, this or that candidate, coming up with different types of legislation, discussing which candidates that we want to push, as well as organizing different types of activism, whether that means big tent MAGA brand rally at some actual physical location. There's a MAGA rally, showing up to it with our guys and injecting our commentary, our thoughts, brushing shoulders with more normies and regular folks who haven't necessarily heard the ideas that we are familiar with, as well as even starting a MAGA rally ourselves. Somebody in our group of people could start a MAGA rally using that brand. While hosting that event, we can direct the discussion of things. We can suggest different types of political ambitions or endeavors, legislation, and hopefully that will entice more normal folks that are on the normie side of things, the boomer side of things, or whatever, but people that haven't gotten into these rabbit holes in the dissident right, alt media, to come around and hear our ideas and get on board with some of our legislative propositions or candidates that we're trying to push. Another type of activism that we could coordinate from this site would be something like what American Identity Movement does, where they show up to the different story times with the degenerate transgender story times at the libraries, or even just a fag parade, a gay parade. Show up to those and do a counter protest. And so we hope to every week, for a couple weeks, we'll just have it kind of within us. It'll be small, but then we'll eventually, within a couple weeks, invite some higher profile people on, people that have Facebook or Twitter or YouTube followings of anywhere from 2 to 30, 50, 60,000 people. But they're lesser known personalities and they tend to be anonymous, most of them. And we'll invite them on, and we'll have 5 or 6 people on at a time of these invitees, these guests, and let them kind of talk amongst each other, and we'll inject our questions and our suggestions. And hopefully in this way, we can kind of disseminate a mission or a plan or an ambition, a goal to the respective followings and audiences of these different pages, Twitter handles, and YouTube channels, so that we can just basically collectivize to accomplish our political goals. For a long time, the dissident right, alt media has been propagating ideas, raising awareness about this or that. We think it's important to start to make a foray into the pragmatic side of things, the actual achieving political, legislative goals, so that we can have tangible achievements rather than just a vague raising of awareness. We need to start advancing things further. So have these people on here, see what we can come up with, and then we come up with a plan, and these different handles, page admins, and YouTube channels disseminate to their followers or their audiences. Anyways, so that's pretty much the plan for Reactionary Grounds. We'll also just have some discussions, but it's not as much just like a philosophical discussion forum. There's channels like that, like JF Garapi and Heel Turn and channels like that. We don't plan to really focus on that, although we will have some discussions. But we're excited to see what we can accomplish. Some people say that we should just be anonymous. We should just work in the background, just the invisible Kekistani army, just propagating viral memes and gradually, subliminally affecting the average thought, moving the Overton window. There's definitely a place for that. That has to be a part of what we're doing as well. And we do want as much anonymity as we can maintain. But we also think that it's important to offer that opportunity rather than just undermining the left. We want to offer an opportunity in politics for the proper way forward. We want to offer actual legislation that people can campaign for and fight for, and things that they can actually positively do. So we thought that it was important in order toward that end to try to unify and kind of coordinate. We basically have to have a way to coordinate. And so there can be both. We can continue to undermine the left through our anonymous meme campaigns and whatnot online and the other discussion forums. And we also need to continue to try to draw out the insanity of the left, bait them to reveal their own insanity, try to trigger them and let them reveal themselves as their own worst enemy. Those have to stay a part of what we're doing. But this is maybe a third pillar, you might say, where we're going to do something positive, and you have to coordinate to do anything in the political realm. We have to reveal our power level, so to speak. We have to show how big of a footprint that we have to society, and then use that power level to push for it. So that's the idea. We'll see how it goes. You guys have anything to add to that? Larry, Philippe, or me, Cutter?
I think.
Yeah, Big Mac. Oh, please go
Sorry,
ahead.
I was just gonna say I think Big Mac hit it right on the point. Here, Philippe from France again. I just wanted to say I'm looking forward to the extensive discussions we'll have, but also various action items, and of course we'll have a lot of exciting guests on this show, from which we'll be able to hear a lot, and not just the usual stuff that they will talk about or post, but get the personal aspect from such guests that we'll have on. Larry.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll second both what Philippe and Big Mac said. Something I think very, very important that Big Mac said was that we have to stay radical. If we've seen anything, it's that we cannot simply try to fly under the radar and expect that our ideas will be adopted by the establishment. There was a great speech given about 2009 by Paul Gottfried where he concluded his speech saying that we need to do to the neocons what they did to us. And I think that is one of my personal long-term aspirations to see play out. So I definitely second what Big Mac had to say on that matter. I'll take it back to you.
Me Cutter, what have you got to say?
I'm looking forward to combining the insight of our guests on this show and to create an effective approach to destroying the agenda of our enemies and advancing our interests as a movement. And
fuck yeah,
that's my interest. That's what I hope for.
Hurrah!
right on. Yeah, yeah, right on, guys. And I'd also like to add that we had a little bit of a complication. This is our first time live streaming onto YouTube like this, so figuring it out. But we had one more co-host who's been with us this whole time, who's been definitely as much a part of this as us. His name's Natty. Natty will be joining us at the nearest possible live stream, probably next weekend, hopefully. But he's a really smart guy as well, and we're excited to combine his insights and ideas. But so there's 5 of us in total. You've met 4 of us, and speaking to some of the suggestion about using this platform to coordinate legislative efforts, I was going to give you some examples, some suggestions, just in passing, of the types of legislation we might be able to push with this platform. You could push things like immigration quotas. You could push, see here, bring up my list. We brought a list together. Different types of legislation to deal with the fags or the transgenders, especially as it relates to their scandalizing the children and getting in close proximity to children, whether it's banning these book readings or something like that. But this in particular, the legislation to deal with the transgenders and the related pedophilia issue is very palatable to even normies. Your average boomer even is very pissed off about the transgender book readings. They hate the degeneracy that's being pushed on the kids. Getting them to be on board with protesting the gay pride parade, maybe a little bit further out there because that's more mainstream. But with the transgender book readings, you got these fucking clowns, these weirdos. Everybody can see it's messed up, and they're around the kids. So we thought that for the types of legislation we might eventually push or try to push through this platform, we want to try to walk a little bit of a tightrope. It's always a tightrope of pushing our agenda, but in a way that is likely to win as well. And so we don't want to forget what Larry said about being radicals, and that radical agenda, or we should say reactionary agenda, it underlies our whole effort, and it remains under the surface at all times, and we will always stay true to those ambitions. But we obviously can't go beyond the Overton window and get what we want politically. We have to stay within what's politically feasible to some extent. So that's why some of these things to deal with, like the transgender book readings or whatever, are a good bet. Some other things that we might push for are getting out of the Middle East. The so-called conspiracies about the false flags that instigated previous wars, like the Gulf of Tonkin, the Lusitania, weapons of mass destruction, and even increasingly questions about 9/11 and doubts about what really happened there. And now you've got the so-called mines that blew up the Japanese tanker, damaged the Japanese tanker, which are probably going to be tried. They're going to try to use that to justify conflict with Iran. People are really starting to, even in the mainstream, starting to become skeptical of these attacks, these events that are used to justify action. And we probably could latch onto that. I mean, Trump himself ran on the disenchantment with the Iraq war and how we went in there. It was a lie. There were no weapons of mass destruction. People are pissed that we've been there so long. We've wasted lives and so much money. Everybody has that subconscious understanding that we are overextended. We're acting beyond our means. And I think that opposition to the Iran war and just Middle Eastern intervention in general would be very popular. The only 2 things that your average boomer wants to do is either completely nuke and glass the whole place and just end it, or they want to totally pull out. Nobody wants to nation build. Nobody wants a ground invasion. So we could just push that choice. Like, hey, we either want you to nuke the fuck out of that place or just leave, because we're tired of all the waste that's involved with it. That'd be popular. Internet regulation is another one that's huge, and increasingly it'd be very popular if we pushed it. Everybody's well aware of the censorship, and they can see that it's a problem. They know what happened to Trump during his election, and just the way that the media, online and cable news media complex was organized against him. So those are just some suggestions. You guys got any ideas?
Yeah, I think all those topics are great. I think it would be worth talking about current events, kind of like what we're talking about, yeah, or you mentioned, especially with the whole Iran issue being pressed. We definitely don't want another Iraq war happening, and we definitely don't want to fight Iran on the behest of Saudi Arabia and Israel, and especially not on behalf of the neocons that are entrenched in DC. So
I'm into that.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. To add to that, there's this meme that's been going around, which I think should be taken pretty seriously, which is that you have this historical series of ships, or some sort of transportation vehicle that was that was allegedly attacked by some nefarious actor, and that became the justification for the complete annihilation of that nefarious actor. Probably most recent. I mean, whether or not I do not want to speculate on which of those were false flags or not. I'm not in the business of that. I don't think most people are here. But something that came to mind that kind of turned the tide in our Middle Eastern policy was the USS Cole, the attack on the USS Cole off of the Gulf of Aden in 2000. This was kind of before 9/11. If had 9/11 not occurred, let's say, that would have been viewed as maybe the beginning of the quote unquote war on terror, and was in that 1 year period kind of used to justify that before the attacks on the World Trade Center. So such things are things I believe that we should be vigilant about. And as Big Mac alluded to, a lot of boomers, Gen Xers, older and younger people are kind of aware of and are vigilant of. That doesn't mean that we could stop a catastrophe, but it does mean that we have a certain amount of backing when it comes to opposing kind of large-scale military intervention, especially when the justification is shaky, tenuous, possibly even tenuous. So that's what I wanted to say.
Yes. Yeah, the situation is tricky. I mean, we want to try to affect some positive political achievements and change through this kind of, this nexus, this hub. But we do have to be careful as well. There's a lot to be discussed about how to execute this whole thing, because there are advantages to being totally dispersed and disorganized and viral, obviously. I mean, it's harder to track down and to thwart or to cut off a movement if it's viral, dispersed, organic. And this is what we're proposing here is a little bit more top down, a little bit more more organized. We do want to coordinate, so it is more organized, but it has some advantages over just like it's different than like Richard Spencer, for instance, just telling all of his followers to go do something, because then you only have to track one guy, and then you know what everybody's going to do, and you know the identity. All you have to do is put Richard Spencer in jail, and you've cut off the head of the snake, so to speak. But with this approach, we're going to have multiple, over the course of time, many dozens of these handles, page admins, and YouTube creators getting together on here 5 or 6 at a time, 4 or 5, 6 at a time. And a lot of them are anonymous themselves, unlike Richard Spencer, whose identity is publicly known. So they're anonymous, and they each have their own, respective followings that they can kind of rally, so to speak. So This has more anonymity. We're all anonymous as well, of course, and it is still more dispersed. There's no single leader. There are multiple leaders, and the multiple leaders' identities are anonymous. So we, you know, we'd be a multi-headed snake, and we'd be a lot harder to kill than that kind of simple top-down approach. So I feel like it's kind of a good halfway in between compromise, where we have a much higher potential for coordination and cooperative effort, but also we have the anonymity still. We have much more. We still have the viral aspect and the dispersed aspect to a large extent. So we're aware of the advantages of being anonymous and dispersed and totally disorganized, so to speak. But if we want to push actual political things, if we want to push actual legislation, we're going to have to show up at physical rallies, physical events where people are hobnobbing and brushing shoulders. We're going to have public events that, because the average boomer and normie, I mean, eventually some of our memes make their way to them, or just your average normie, Gen Xer, whoever. It doesn't have to be boomers. The memes make their way to them. They trickle down. They don't see all of it. They see some of it, depending on who they're friends with. But to really make an impression on a lot of those people, we do have to, I think, publicly display our power level. We have to physically get out there in person. We have to physically, visibly do things to demonstrate that we have a crowd of people. When you got one guy in a room of 100 and he's the only one that thinks something, he might even be a convincing advocate of whatever he's proposing. But if he's the only one that's in favor of it, nobody's going to join him, because you feel like a retard joining some outlier. But if you get 5 people out there, well, then proportionately it's less obvious when you join them. It's less of a fearsome thing to join 5, 6, 10, 20 people than it is to join 1 out of 100. So that is important, is demonstrating just how many of us there are, or at least some portion of it, to the public, a rally, and just also getting in contact with people who otherwise wouldn't really hear a coherent message from us, because they don't come into contact with us consistently enough to really understand our full message. They just get snippet here, snippet there from some, based meme, but they're not able to piece together the full picture that we paint. We need to get into contact with the average person out there, and we need to demonstrate our power level a bit, and we need to go to these rallies to actually get into politicians' faces and pressure them by yelling, or just when we get the microphone, asking questions to push these different types of agendas, because otherwise we're just attacking the left. We want to attack the left, but we're just gonna what we don't want to have happen is create a vacuum where there's no better alternative. Nothing. We want something to be set up in the wings, waiting and ready to go, to replace the paradigm and the politics that the left has created. We want to set up that alternative and phase out the one with ours. So that takes groundwork, takes footwork. We have to get out there and set up our alternative. But it's my thoughts.
Excellent thoughts, Big Mac.
Thanks, bro.
I wanted to talk. I wanted to see or preface who we will be having in the short term. Is that something you can comment on, Big Mac, or are you not sure? Or are we not sure at the moment?
Yeah, well, I figured for our first group, our first guests, we have some close buddies who are also pretty sharp, in our kind of immediate circle of acquaintances, and they're dissident folks as well. And I figured we could have them on to start out. It might be the most tractable way to move forward, the easiest way to do it, since we're new to this still. And then the next week, try to have, I think, Philippe, you have some acquaintances in Europe that you said would be interested to come on. So that'd be interesting to have some of our European brethren come on and speak for themselves, give us some of their thoughts from their dealings over there, and invite Europe into this whole discussion, because we're all in America, but this movement is broader than just America. So we can learn from each other. And so that would be the third week. The or the week after next, and then after that, so not next week or the week after that, but the third weekend after that, or from now, we would hopefully have on some of these handles and these pages, admins, and YouTube channels. Let me give some examples of the types of people that we were interested in to have on. Here's some of these names here. Against, a lot of these are just Facebook pages right here. Against Degeneracy, Legio Christi, Patriotic Children of God, Sons of Lepanto, Trad Dad, The Patriarchy, Disdainus Maximus, This is Europa, Traditional Western Man, The Counter-Revolution, Imperial Truth, The American Nationalist, Sons of the West 4, Wrath of the Saxon, Meme Lord for Hire Mark III, Cultured Thug, Marshall Ironsides, Black Shirted American. Getting down here, some of these are YouTube personalities. Asha
That
Logo.
sounds like a pretty extensive list, huh?
Yeah, we've got I could go on, I guess. Yeah, we've got a list of people here that most of these are anonymous, and they've each got a following of 10 to 20, even 30,000 people, some of them more. But E. Michael Jones is also, we're interested in him as well. VDare, Tradition in Action. Yeah, so we could go on. We've got a lot of them on Twitter. Here's some Twitter handles that we like: Pontificator Maximus, Among the Ruins, Porter, American Lad, Wrath of Non, Andrew Quaxon, Will Westcott, and there's others as well. We've got a bigger list, but we hope to get all these people on and more to join us and see what we could come up with if we put our heads together. So
Yeah,
time to take it beyond.
Listen to that.
Just
listen to that list. Just listening to you list off the prospective guests. One thing that I guess one would notice is that these people are kind of they're ideologically diverse. All of them are certainly within the realm of what would be considered the dissident right. But each of them will bring kind of their own flavor and own perspective, and in pursuit of what we are trying to do, which is to be a nexus for these people to link up. This is certainly a good thing. We want people who share our immediate and long-term goals, even if there are minor issues that divide us, to put those aside and work with us to achieve the common aspirations that we have, which I think is very important.
Absolutely, yeah. This is a group that'll welcome pagans and Catholics. A lot of us here are Christians on this channel, actually Catholics, but we recognize that there are alliances that are needed. So we're absolutely not going to turn pagans away. I'm definitely a Deus Vult kind of guy myself. I think we need the holy aspect. I think we need to be sanctified to win this. And I'm always going to be pushing the religious side of things personally, but as far as things like immigration and whatnot, we can all team up for things like that, and as well as the other types of legislation we talked about. And these pages are smaller in scale. A lot of them not that big, but you put all their followings together, and it's a pretty sizable audience, and they're all pretty anonymous too, which is cool. So I think people would just like to tune in to get to know some of these people better, hear the voices and hear the
personal side of all these names, right?
Right. Yeah, it'd be interesting. So I'm not sure if we had too much more to say on this live stream here. That should give you all a taste of what we're looking to do. Yeah, we think we have a niche here. We think we have something that is new and useful. It's not just a commentary channel. And it could be useful for coordinating and unifying our movement. If we think that there is a place for that, it has to stay. It should always stay viral to an extent. It should always stay anonymous as much as it can, because we don't have the upper leg or the upper hand. We don't have the levers of power in hand. We're not free of censorship, and doxing and getting fired for our beliefs. So we have to be as anonymous as we can be, but we have to also get into reality as well to push. I mean, if there's not going to be a civil war just yet, then we have to keep on working with the political. Our philosophy is that we have to keep on doing what we can politically until a war breaks out. If it does, we have to find a way to become politically relevant, not just an interesting rabbit hole for people that search it out, but for the average person to hear our message in a somewhat palatable way. Yeah, look forward to seeing y'all in weeks to come. And again, we apologize for the amateurish presentation here. We're editing it and improving it as we go, but we're new to this. We just thought that it had to be done, so we took it upon ourselves to start this. And thank you very much for tuning in. Unless you guys had other things to contribute, maybe tune back in next week.
All right, Big Mac, thank you very much.
Bet. All right. Good
Thanks
to
for
go
coming
there.
up.
All right, guys. Take care. Bye.
Take care.